You are listening to a double edition of the IU Report with Grant Shouse and Mike Hutsell. A little basketball, then a little bit of football. And it's only on the Central Indiana Sports Report.
Welcome, IU fans, to the Central Indiana Sports Report. It's the IU Report here. Grant Shouse with Mike Hutsell, Greg Mengelt, the producer, the guy who runs the operation. And Mike, there's a lot of good things to talk about. There's a couple, at least one particular bad thing we're going to talk about, and what is a really great thing to talk about. Basketball team tonight, as we started recording this, is absolutely demolishing Penn State. They lead 105-62 at this point. Lamar Wilkerson just set the school record for most threes in a game, scored over 40 points. Just incredible. This is the right time to do it. Like, you're not doing this and breaking this kind of record against Vienna or Lindenwood or one of those schools. This is a conference team that you're just giving them an absolute beatdown on your home floor right now, especially when Indiana had last week was the week that they had, which was not good. Now they're able to kind of come back with some vengeance against Penn State and hopefully carry that over to Kentucky.
This is the yin and yang of, I think, what you're going to see out of this team this year, because as frustrated as we all were a week ago on Wednesday night when they absolutely dropped a turd in the punch bowl against Minnesota, you've got the 100% opposite effect tonight. You've got a team that's at the under 4 timeout, has 105 points on the board, 16 made three-pointers, was at one point shooting over 70% well into the second half of the game. Lamar Wilkerson, 10 threes. Tucker DeVries didn't hit a first three till the 72nd point of the game. And they were having this kind of night offensively. Reed Bailey comes off the bench tonight and actually looks like a different guy. Contributes, was a little more active than we've seen, and just good to see the fan base maybe get a little bit of good news after what was a frustrating 2-game stretch there for this basketball team, and restore some goodwill. And you got a big one this weekend against renewing a rival.
This is just what the doctor ordered, in my opinion. They needed this so bad to have a game like this, because this is really, other than maybe like that Alabama A&M game or the Marquette game, this has really been the first time since then that they've just absolutely dominated. And just everything they've thrown up has gone in. They can't miss. This is a Penn State team that is 8-1. But you look at who they've played. Their non-conference schedule is bad, like worse than Indiana's. So they're 8-1. So that 8-1 record's a little deceiving. If you're Mike Rhodes there at Penn State, it's like, geez, man, we're going to have to step it up here in conference play if we want to be able to dominate like how Indiana is tonight. What a performance it is for Indiana to now get your first conference win of the season.
Yeah, and Penn State, you talk about their 8-1 record and their schedule being what it is. They haven't even really dominated some of these teams that they've struggled. I mean, they played so far this year. There's been some struggles in there just to get out with wins. Normally, you want to see like a 20 to 30 point non-conference win in some of these games, and there's games where they're only winning by, the Mike Woodson special, where you're only winning by 8, and you have to pull away in the under 4 timeout and pull it out. So yeah, this is in the Big Ten. There's not a lot of layups, and you can't blow your layups. And we talked about last week, felt like Indiana blew a layup in that game at Minnesota. So tonight was it's tough to say there's a must win in conference in December, but if you can't win one of these first two against Minnesota and Penn State, you're looking at a long, hard winter. And they took the doubt off the table early in this one. And like you said, it's been one of their more complete dominating performances of the year. And you got to do this against a bad Penn State team.
think it kind of opens some people's eyes here to see Indiana, put up over 100 points in a conference game. Just absolutely dominating, because there's people out there that will see the score and think, wow, Penn State is really bad for Indiana to do this. Indiana has absolutely dominated this basketball game. Again, everything they've thrown up has gone in. Lamar Wilkerson's had the game that he's played. I guess how dominating Indiana is and how far apart the score is that we've started doing the reaction before the game is even over. There's still 3.5 minutes left when we're doing this. I like where Indiana's at here. And they even said it on TV. Kevin Kugler, the play-by-play guy, said that if you're an Indiana fan, you're hoping they can carry this over to Kentucky. I think they can win the Kentucky game after what I've seen from Kentucky. They are not a great basketball team. They've lost games that they probably shouldn't have lost. They have just played poorly here at the start of the year with Mark Pope. And I know that Big Blue Nation is really frustrated with him. And so if Indiana can go on the road down there to Rupp Arena on Saturday night and win that game, that is just going to be absolutely massive for this program, especially when you're renewing that rivalry.
If you could go to Rupp and you can make things uncomfortable in the first 10 minutes of the game, the crowd is ready to turn. I mean, we saw on Friday night, they went down to Nashville. They played Gonzaga. Gonzaga buried them early, and the crowd just erupted. It was hilarious. As someone who's grown up hating Kentucky as much as I have, to hear their fan base just absolutely turn on them. And if they come out and they look bad at home again against a power conference opponent, because that's the teams they haven't beaten this year. They lost to Louisville in their early season game. They lost to Michigan State in the Champions Classic. They lost to North Carolina at home in a close game. They got absolutely railroaded by Gonzaga. So they've already got 4 losses on the season. If Indiana comes in there and knocks down a couple threes early and they can get out to about a 12-4 lead and force Pope to take a timeout, the crowd down there is just ready to turn. And you can make things a lot easier on yourself if you can come out and get to a fast start. We'll probably talk more about that game later this week. If we don't, just one thing about Kentucky that concerns me is they're a roster that's not well constructed. Seems like they took a lot of sixth men from teams a year ago and from power conference teams a year ago and tried to make it into a national title contender. They're also the type of team Indiana doesn't necessarily match up well against, because it's going to be a team that I think Indiana is going to struggle to defend. Their athleticism, their ability to, put the ball on the floor and attack the basket. We know Indiana struggles with that. We know Indiana tends to get in foul trouble when teams are able to match them athletically. So that is a bit of a concern to me. One thing about Kentucky is they have not shot the ball well this year from the perimeter. And they're still awaiting the debut of their prize of their portal class, which was Jaden Quaintance from Arizona State. He hasn't played a minute yet this year. And there's rumors and murmurs that he's back practicing and he could debut on Saturday against Indiana.
Well, to transition over to football, if you haven't seen it, if you're living under a rock, Indiana is 13-0 in football. They're the number 1 seed in the college football playoff. And they have a legit shot, I think, to maybe win the national championship. Now, with that being said, Indiana football, it was learned on Tuesday that there's a blow to their team. Stephen Daly, who is the Big Ten tackles for loss leader, who did not make first team all conference, which is crazy, is now going to be out for the year with a devastating knee injury. At least that's how it looks for now. And that is just such a blow to this defense, who he was already the backup in there. that goes to show how deep Indiana was. He was already in there as the backup and really came into his own there in the second half of the season. And for him to miss time, especially going into the playoff when you think you now have a roster that can win a national championship, that's a tough blow for the defense. The good thing is that Indiana's coaching staff is the best in the country. You have the best defensive coordinator in the country. And I have no doubt in my mind that over these next 3.5 weeks, they will find someone to step into Stephen Daly's place and, will them to hopefully 3 more wins this season.
Until I see something more official, I'm going to assume all these videos I've seen so far are AI, and this is just
Me too.
all a bad fever dream, and there's not really any reason for us to discuss this. My favorite Stephen Daly stat this season, we talk about him not being a first-team all-conference performer, only getting an honorable mention. In his season where he was a Heisman finalist, Aiden Hutchinson had 16 tackles for loss. Stephen Daly this year had 18.
Unbelievable.
That shows you how dominant of a season the kid had. And if everything's true, which it likely is, the fact that no one's come out and sort of put water on the fire is pretty concerning. From any history I've ever seen with Indiana, both football and basketball, when there's rumors of something like this and nothing is said about it, the longer it goes on, it tends to be true. And I don't really want to sit here and continue to speculate. We don't know anything for certain, but it certainly is trending in that direction. So, but if there's a coaching staff and especially a defensive coordinator who's equipped to put something together, you definitely think of Haynes, who's named one of I think he was named the defensive coordinator of the year by some publication or some
it was
group
the
today.
AFCA, the American Football Coaches Association. He was the
that
assistant coach of the year.
Assistant.
That's a no doubter.
We're very fortunate to have who we have. Mara could go back to that DN spot, and you could put Ndukwe at Kamara's position. We've got Mario Landino, who's
still Tyreek Tucker.
Kind of disappeared a little bit after the Illinois game, but he played very, very well in the Big Ten title game. I trust the coaching staff can scheme around it. We said when Wyatt went down, we thought that they would just have to scheme around Wyatt's injury, and then Daly ended up being one of the best defensive players in the conference. So you hate to hear it, but you still are the number 1 seed overall in the college football playoff, and nothing's going to change that. So now you just got to go out and line it up and show why you're there.
And is it crazy to say, Mike, that I feel bad for the guy because he really has been a little bit of a difference maker in some of these close games this year. I feel bad for him that he's probably could be out for the rest of the year. But at the same time, I'm not necessarily too concerned about it because we've seen guys like Ndukwe come in there. Mikel Kamara has actually probably hasn't had as good of a season as he did in 2024. He was kind of the Stephen Daly of that team last year in 2024. Everybody's expected him to be a star this year. I don't want to say he hasn't showed up, but he just hasn't lived up to expectation, but he still had a phenomenal year. So he's going to have to step up. You hate for it to be anybody, but you're sitting here and it could be worse. It could be someone else. It could be the anchor of your defense, the quarterback of your defense. It could be one of your great secondary players. It could be one of your great linebackers. So this is something that, yes, it sucks. It is a little concerning, but at the same time, Indiana is so deep especially on defense, that I'm upset about it, but I'm not too concerned to an extent. I think you're a little concerned when you get into the Rose Bowl and if his absence is felt, then you're kind of looking back on that a little differently. Speaking of defense, I did want to bring this up because I have watched Big Ten Championship a couple times since then. I think I've watched it twice since. And I'm going to tell you, Mike, what I thought the play of the game was on defense. Do you know what I'm going to say?
If I'm picking it, it's the Elijah Hardy play that broke up the pass to force the field goal.
That play, and in the first half, Isaiah Jones got to Julian Sayin on the sideline to force fourth down and for them to kick a field goal. You got to keep in mind here, start thinking about this. Fernando throws the interception there to set Ohio State up, and they come down and score a touchdown. What if he doesn't throw that interception? I don't think Ohio State scores a touchdown the entire game. You can look at it like that. That's how dominant Indiana's defense was. Indiana had let them have the one driver. They came down. They kind of chipped away. They chiseled the clock down and, set them up. And the Elijah Hardy play in the end zone to bat the ball away from Jeremiah Smith was the play of the game. It was a clutch play. You didn't realize how clutch it would be because you're thinking in your mind, well, they're still going to kick a field goal here and tie this game up. And then another big play was not necessarily something the defense did. It was kind of the poor decision from Sayin, where Sayin dived too early, kind of lowered his lower body too early, and was down short of the line to gain inside the 5, and that gave Indiana the ball back because they could have scored a touchdown there too. That game, now that I look back on it, Mike, it feels like Indiana made so many plays that like you would see out of like a Hollywood movie about this kind of thing. They just came up big when they needed to, and it felt nip and tuck the entire game.
Elijah Hardy, you talk about a story in a Hollywood movie. This is a 0-star kid who comes out of the Naval Academy. And of all these great players we've mentioned on their defense, who's their leading tackler on the year? It's Elijah Hardy. So it just goes to show, again, not only the quality of their depth, but just the quality of their coaching, because you scheme up a guy who played service academy football, and you get this guy to be one of the best players on what statistically is one of the best defenses in the country. You can't take for granted just how good this defensive coaching staff is, and that's maybe the best example of it right there.
It's been a nice couple of days here for Indiana fans with winning the Big Ten championship, and that you're the 1 seed now, and then the basketball team does what they do against Penn State. They win 113-70, and 72. I don't remember 72, 113-72. I don't remember them ever scoring that many points in a game, maybe in my entire life. I know they've scored over 100 in some games, but probably have to go back and look to see when the last time they scored that many, especially in a Big Ten game. Like, that's just insane. So this has been a nice couple days here for Indiana fans, Mike.
Well, basketball is a lot easier when you shoot 68.9% from the field, which is what they did tonight. And included in that is 17 of 31 from 3-point range. So it wasn't just a Lamar Wilkerson night from 3. It was the entire basketball team. So kudos to them getting back on track. And you also, let's not forget, as we sometimes tend to do, we got a volleyball team in the Sweet 16 heading to Austin to play in the Texas Regionals. So 2 good wins by the volleyball team on Thursday and Friday last week. Knocked off Colorado, came back in the 3rd game. So 2 sweeps, really, really cool to see. Not something that you often get out of Indiana in volleyball. 2010 was the last time they made it this far. So you got 3 pretty good things going, and we won't talk about the last performance by the women's basketball team.
Here's another thing to point out is that, of course, the basketball team again plays at Kentucky on Saturday. And right before that, you can watch the Heisman Trophy ceremony where Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza is the favorite to win the award. and you'll see that in New York City. Again, the 4 finalists being Fernando Mendoza, Julian Sayin from Ohio State, Jeremiah Love from Notre Dame, and Diego Pavia there at Vanderbilt. 2 Big Ten, one who's not in a conference, and one SEC. And I don't feel like Fernando Mendoza, Mike, is like the clear-cut favorite, but there's no question about it that I think he should win it.
Yeah, he should definitely win. First of all, I want to say it's not been confirmed, but there is rumors that Jeremiah Love may not come because he doesn't feel like he's going to win, so he may just decide to stay home. This is a huge disservice to the Heisman trophy that they wouldn't.
We've seen Notre Dame. They do quit when things tend not to go their way.
Difference between the candidates is you have Fernando Mendoza doing a fundraiser through his NIL to try to raise money for multiple sclerosis, which of course his mother has. And then you have Diego Pavia, whose mother is $1 bill at a time on a stage somewhere in Nashville, probably raising money on her own. So,
come on, Mike.
I mean,
unbelievable. Mike Hutsell.
Grant, I'll go with one of Grant's. She is a handsome lady.
Do you think Fernando's going to win, Mike?
I do, but I think that it's a lot closer. It's a lot closer than people probably want to admit that it is. The betting lines, like during the Big Ten championship, went from Mendoza being the second pick to like him being minus 2,000, which seemed crazy. And, you know, Stuart Mandel on Twitter says he does a little bit of, his own straw poll among voters. And he says, this is a lot closer than anybody really thinks it is. So if Pavia wins, I'm not going to be stunned. I don't think it's going to be saying.
I really think that we're going here to just basically see if it's Fernando Mendoza or Diego Pavia. I think, jokes aside, I think that like you could tell Jeremiah Love and Julian Sayin to stay home because they're not winning. I'd be shocked if one of them won. I wouldn't be shocked if Pavia won. I really wouldn't. And as the Indiana fan in me, I'd be disappointed if Mendoza didn't win. But I can tell you this, I'd way rather see him win a national championship than win the Heisman. I think any Indiana fan would tell you that. I
don't think the Heisman moves the needle quite like it used to. Let's be 100% honest. And this isn't like and you weren't around, but Greg and I remember Peyton Manning versus Charles Woodson debate for the Heisman years ago. If you win it, it's great publicity for your school. When it comes down to voting for it, we all know the SEC is a hive. It's a hive mind mentality. All the voters in the South are going to vote for Pavia. Whereas in the Big Ten, the Midwest voter, there's still people that are going to say, the Heisman Trophy winner can't come from freaking Indiana. So I'm going to vote for Sayin anyway. You don't have that hive mentality necessarily in the Midwest that you have in the SEC. I mean, Paul Feinbaum, we joke about this clown a lot, but he's already come out and said, he's like, Fernando Mendoza is not going to win the Heisman. And he might be right. And that's because of the mindset is still there, and the SEC is going to vote for the SEC. So don't be surprised if Pavia wins. And also don't be surprised if Pavia's mom doesn't dance on stage and get some dollar bills thrown her way.
And when it comes down to character, if it was based on character, then Mendoza would win that thing by a long shot. I know he's corny. I know he's super cringy. I know he said the Hoosiers are flipping champs and then said the corniest let's go of all time in that post-game interview. But the guy carries himself in a way that just most people don't at that age. He's not arrogant. At least on the outside. Again, we're looking at this from an outside scope. People around him may think different. He is, like Signetti said, an A++ in every interview he does. I watched him on the Pat McAfee show the other day. He was great on the Pat McAfee show. For him to carry himself the way he does as a 22, 23-year-old dude is just really impressive. And it's really mature. And then his story with his mom and all that. And then Diego Pavia's mom and all that. It definitely, I think, makes Fernando look a lot better. I think it makes him look like he's got more character, and I think he does. He has already stepped up multiple times this year and delivered his Heisman moment. The Penn State was maybe one of the most Heisman moments of all time. It's just incredible. The late throw, and I know this is a Heisman moment, but the late throw to Charlie Becker the other night was huge. That set Indiana up to basically run down the clock to under 20 seconds and give the ball back to Ohio State. That was a little bit of the icing on the cake in a way. The drive against Oregon to come down and score late in the fourth quarter to take the lead. The late touchdown throw against Iowa. The guy has had multiple Heisman moments this year, and Diego Pavia hasn't done that. Julian Sayin didn't do that this year. Jeremiah Love didn't do that this year. Fernando Mendoza has about 3 or 4 Heisman moments, and you could argue probably more. So, and then going back to the 2 other Heisman candidates Indiana's had in its time, Anthony Thompson and Antoine Randall, the reason they didn't win it was because their teams weren't good enough. Well, now Indiana's the number 1 team in the country, and Fernando Mendoza fits, in my opinion, and checks all the boxes that he should to win the Heisman Trophy.
And let's not also forget that Mendoza's given away at least a game and a half of not playing the fourth quarter of games. And the other thing is Indiana has a running game. How many games did they run for 300 yards and didn't need 270 and 3 touchdowns out of their quarterback? Vanderbilt didn't have that. So Pavia had to put up bigger numbers. I think of the 2, obviously this is a non-biased opinion, but I think Mendoza should win. But I'm not going to be stunned if he doesn't.
I agree. I'm not going to get my hopes. I mean, it's the Heisman Trophy. Again, you'd rather the guy win the national championship than win the Heisman.
You can do both, right?
You can.
Okay.
But if I had to pick, I'd pick the national championship, is what I'm saying.
Central Indiana Sports Report is a product of ITG Media. Oh, no, look, Susie.